Let's attempt the questions. Based on the student's observations, what is the action of substance X on starch? So it's substance X. You do not replace it with any name of the enzyme. So X digests or breaks down starch into maltose or a reducing sugar. The next question, what evidence supports that substance X contains an enzyme? Okay, so you can look at the different test tubes. So an enzyme, firstly, is specific in characteristic. It only acts on one substrate. It is denatured at high temperature. Above optimum temperature. Okay. So this is what we call as annotating, but in order to answer the question, we need to use the evidence that is inside the question. So first, X is specific in action. It only hydrolyzes starch. That's one mark. Right, so this is a 1 mark question, but there's also another possible answer that you can use to show that an enzyme is, X is an enzyme, and that it is denatured at 100 degrees Celsius. X is denatured at 100 degrees Celsius. So when it was pre-treated at 100 degrees Celsius, it could no longer change starch into maltose. So in answering questions like these, just stating that X is specific is specific in action or is denatured at high temperature will not be sufficient to answer this question, because the evidence must be specific to the question. Okay, in this case, the action is on starch, and the denaturation happens at 100 degrees Celsius. Let's move to the next question. Suggest 2 experiments that show that the student could perform to find substance X contains an enzyme. Okay, so we could use again a food test to test for an enzyme. So we know from definition that an enzyme is a protein. So one experiment is to use burette test to test substance X. So if it is a protein or contains proteins, then it will turn violet in color. The other one is to use the other characteristic of an enzyme, and that enzymes are pH specific. So in this experiment, the pH in this experiment is pH 7 because of distilled water as well as the starch suspensions, so it's pH 7. We could use other pH for the reaction mixture. Maybe put it use pH above or below pH 7 to see if there will be maltose formed. Because above and below pH 7, whether it's 5 or 6, the enzyme is inactive. Beyond 5 or above and below pH 7 is 6 and 8. Okay, beyond 6 and 8, it will be denatured. So that is another way that a student could perform an experiment to check if substance X is indeed an enzyme. The last question is an experiment question that can come out either in theory or in practical. So the purpose of including test tubes 1 and 2, and why are they necessary? So usually students stop at saying that T1 is a control or T2 is a control, and the purpose is always linked, to the experiment. This experiment was to see how X hydrolyzes starch, and so T1 is used as a control to compare with T3. Okay, T2 is a control to compare with T4, but it still does not answer the question because it does not link back the purpose to the investigation and the experiment. So the purpose of test tube 1 is to be used to compare or to show that starch is a substrate for hydrolysis action. Hydrolysis action by X. So it goes back to the experimental purpose, the hydrolysis action of X on starch. T2 is to show that enzymes, to show that enzymes are specific, that they act on enzyme X, they act on starch.